So for today, I'm going to ask you to just each introduce yourself, and then I'll ask questions back and forth, and I might ask some follow-ups of each of you without each of you asking one another questions, which was the format for one of your more recent engagements that you had. So, Kathy, you're the independent and one that I hadn't had the opportunity to talk to too much, so I know a little bit less about you. But I'm going to ask you to go first with the introductions, followed by Margaret, and then followed by Andrew. And then the questions, I'll just ask you in a continuous flow. Just asking each of you to lead sometimes, and sometimes you'll be the second, sometimes you'll be the third. So it's kind of round table it that way.
Okay.
So if you're all set, Dave, on your end. Dave's microphone is off, but I see the recording button, so I'm going to assume that we're set. So
I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. You're all set to begin.
Thank you. All right. And candidate Lindeen, if you want to start and give us some of your background and your interest in running for this position.
Sure. My background is I'm a Pepperell resident, the usual, have 3 kids, lived here for a long time. I've been a nurse, a critical care nurse, ICU, CCU nurse for quite a long time. I started off as a diploma nurse, BSN at Riviere, got a master's in communication at Boston University. And I do like saying this, as you know, I was on the board of nursing for 5 years. I've also done some town volunteering. I'm interested in this because what I see is just a problem with the parties. They've become more party government oriented. And I just figured a more middle ground candidate might help the situation. There's just a lot of extreme governing, more on ideologies than on worrying about the citizens. So that's actually why I'm here. And I do think I'm qualified because, I have life experiences. I've run my family. I think I'm a successful business that way. I've educated myself, educated my kids. And I think I would bring a different perspective to Beacon Hill. And I have no problem speaking up. I can get people to come to my side. And that's why I just really want to change things and try and make government work more for the people than for itself.
Great. Thank you so much. Candidate Scarsdale.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Kim, and thank you to the Townsend Business Association and PCAM and the other candidates for making this forum possible. My name is Margaret Scarsdale, and I'm running to be the state rep for this district because I've seen firsthand the power of community engagement, and I've seen the challenges and opportunities that face our communities. I've rolled up my sleeves and I have delivered real results for the better part of the past decade. I've been doing this work long before this campaign began. I worked on the Kinder Morgan fight and the toxic dirt fight alongside many of the people who will be watching this recording. I fought for and secured multiple grants, and this year as chair of the Pepperell Select Board, I saved our school district over $500,000 and saved Townsend from an override. I have shown my commitment to this work and our future by co-founding a regional climate change group, by voting to fund affordable housing and building regional partnerships. As the only candidate in the race to serve as an elected leader, I know what it takes to get the job done because I've gotten it done. I know from my work that this work is so purposeful and so meaningful and so transformative. We have such great needs in our community, and people all across this district are looking for someone who's genuinely interested in working with them on their issues. And issues are very rarely one-dimensional. They're related to other issues. They're connected to other people. And so bringing those people together and unpacking those issues takes a leader. And that has been my work and the foundation of my work for many years. And I would be honored to continue that for the First Middlesex.
Thank you. Candidate Shepherd.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Dave, TCAM, my fellow candidates. A little bit of a background about myself. Born and raised in the town of Townsend. I'm fortunate to come from a family that's been working and living in the district for over 100 years, and that's as farmers, as firefighters, as business owners. And I'm proud to be here today, continuing that commitment to the community and running for state rep to serve the First Middlesex district and work to make it better. And as our campaign slogan says, work to make government work better for you. A little bit about me. I'm the only candidate to have worked on Beacon Hill before. I worked with former state representative Sheila Harrington. I worked in her constituent office in Groton, solving local issues and constituent concerns, and also down on Beacon Hill in her Boston office. And then I also had a chance to work with Governor Charlie Baker, who's recently endorsed my campaign in his executive office of access and opportunity. Working with Governor Baker, I was fortunate to see, in that executive side of the government, working with the legislator, what are the good qualities of the legislator? What does it take to be an effective legislator? And I learned a lot from that experience that I'd bring down with me on Beacon Hill to be effective. I also own my own small business. It's called Bayberry Hill Water Company. It's a 5-gallon water jug delivery service. I know all too well some of the pains and the struggles that people are going through in this economy. We were paying $6.50 for diesel earlier this year, and I'm worried it's going to go back there. And also, having to worry about making a payroll and some of those other challenges of running a business or operating in today's economy. Also really proud to work on our family farm and our family construction business. The construction side, I helped project manage about 3,000 feet of municipal water line that we installed in West Townsend. And the farming side, we raise about 1,000 holiday turkeys, which we're getting ready for, and do about 300 acres of hay throughout the summer. And the last piece is I'm really fortunate and proud to serve as a call volunteer firefighter in the district. And I think that leads a different perspective when making decisions and having votes that are going to affect the district and the Commonwealth, because you've seen people when they're at their worst. You've seen them, through mental health issues, with car accidents, medical emergencies, when they've lost their home and all their belongings. And I think it gives you a different level of compassion and understanding when you're going to be down there making decisions. Kim, you asked really briefly, why we got into running. I'd say it started when I worked with Representative Harrington, and I really saw the importance and the value of having somebody who understands the role and can make a difference and really cares about the community. And when she decided to move on, that's when I wanted to throw my hat in the ring to serve the community and work for the district. So thank you, Kim and Dave and everybody, my fellow candidates.
Thanks so much. I'd like to jump in to some of the questions now. And, you've been around the block a little bit. You've all been speaking at several events. I'd like to focus a little bit on Townsend and the value of Townsend within the district. So as you think about elevating this area, so the district that you'll serve, tell me what about Townsend you think you could incorporate into a vision to bring more business to this area. Candidate Scarsdale, I'll start with you.
Thank you for that question. I've had economic development as a focus of mine for many years now. I understand that vibrant small businesses are really the backbone of small towns, and small towns have a lot of challenges. I wrote 4 grants last year for the town of Pepperell to help small businesses and increase economic development. I had run a downtown revitalization program in Air in 2007, where I secured and administered over $1 million in community development block grant funds to start that town's transformation from sort of that dated 70s look to that vibrant, bustling center that it is now, which is really a draw for communities. Like, that's the heart of a community. If you have someplace to go and see your neighbors and play a game of billiards or have a nice meal, just sidewalks to walk up and down. And it's intergenerational with young families and, elderly residents coming into that area. So I wrote the 4 grants to help springboard Pepperell's economic development in our Main Street corridor. A lot of towns don't really have a robust corridor. They just have a few shops here or there. Pepperell's very lucky to have a long one. Also was instrumental in fostering a relationship in economic development with the Groton Hill Music Center, which is going to bring a lot of traffic to this area. So working with the Groton Destination Committee to understand how we can be a partner, talking with our chambers of commerce who really see this as a regional approach, and so does Groton Destination, so does Pepperell and our Economic Development Advisory Committee. How can we partner to bring those thousands of people who are going to be coming to these concerts over and over? How can we push them out into the district and take advantage of our resources, like our rail trails, our restaurants, and so I see it as a regional approach and tying Townsend into that. And I'm really excited about the makeup of the new first Middlesex district, adding Lunenburg into it. And I've spoken with all of the town administrators, the select boards, the planning boards, the FinComs, and all of the towns, and everyone appreciates and understands the power of a regional approach. That's where I have a lot of expertise, and that's where I would continue to understand like how to lift up the region as a whole. And you mentioned Townsend, certainly as a bordering town to Pepperell, it's only 10 more minutes to get to parts of Townsend, so to push the Groton music traffic that way as well.
Okay, thanks. Candidate Lundeen, I'll let you have the floor on this question now.
Well, all Townsend, Ashby, Pepperell, all this little area is really interconnected. And there is a struggle in the towns, business versus staying rural. And people have to buy into development, to drawing businesses in. If the town is anti-business, which does happen sometimes, then businesses aren't going to come. None of these towns are near great highway access at all. So basically, a lot of it comes down to advertising what we have, welcoming businesses, decreasing the regulations that businesses have to go through. We have to think about how we're going to zone our towns to draw business in. We have a lot of great recreational areas. We have a lot to offer, but we do have to kind of market that. And sometimes I find towns aren't very willing or open to businesses. We actually try to block it down. So the Groton music area may bring business in, but we really have to market what we have. I have a really hard time thinking that those people are going to come to Pepperell. Because when you look at Littleton on one side and Pepperell on the other, we have a long way to go before we're going to draw these people to Pepperell. So I think being more business friendly, being more open, marketing what we have, and that's what I think. It has to really come down to what the people want for their town.
Thank you. Candidate Shepherd.
Sure. Thank you, Kim. I think grants are a part of it, but I don't think that, grants to make your downtown look better are the big piece for drawing in more business and creating a more hospitable environment. They don't affect the bottom line. And, I think going down to Beacon Hill, a big thing for me about being a strong fiscal conservative is making sure that, we're working to cut taxes and decrease regulation, because that's what it's about. It's about making an environment for businesses to be able to thrive and draw more businesses in. Massachusetts I think it's one of the top 4 states for people exiting, all states throughout the country. And that's crazy to me. And I think it's partially because of the overregulation and some of the challenges that come out of Beacon Hill. I think there's a lot of promise to this area, especially with Groton Hill, and I'm fortunate to be part of that project and building it. Meeting with Destination Groton, I think they estimate close to $21 million in anticipated revenue for the area. I think a lot of that would be targeted to Groton. There'll certainly be some roll-offs to the surrounding communities. And this region, we have so much to offer, whether it's just Townsend or the other communities in terms of our agriculture, our agricultural tourism, our natural resources. There's just so much opportunity, but for me, it comes down to making sure we're decreasing regulation and cutting taxes to make a better environment for businesses to thrive.
Thanks. Excuse me. I'd like to push through this question just a little bit more, and we'll go through it in the same order. So, we've got the big music facility there that two of you have mentioned in Groton. The estimations of the revenue is large, but I think we have gaps in our area on how to service a facility like that. Right now for hotels, they would have to go to Littleton for a chain hotel. We have one small hotel in Groton. What are the perspectives of your candidacy on regulations or beefing up the ability for homeowners to house some of the folks that might be coming in? So how do we incorporate Airbnb possibilities, small bed and breakfast type possibilities into the area, along with restaurants? So, for example, last night, I went to 3 different restaurants and they were all so full. How are we going to bring those types of industries specifically to Townsend? I love the restaurants that we have, but with more people coming in to a destination, how are we going to bring them here? So the question is, how do we accommodate the folks? How do we create a climate for that? And how do we bring more restaurants and quite frankly, shops? Groton is doing well with some of their small, unique shops. Of course, we have Evans here in Townsend and our antique stores. But again, just playing off of what's going to be happening in Groton, how do you see that we could make that work? We'll move down this time to start with candidate Lundeen on this one.
Well, we're a border town near New Hampshire, so it's very difficult to draw any type of business in here. We have to start as looking at tax relief, decreasing our sales tax, drawing people into Pepperell, and a lot of it has to do with taxes. It's much easier to shop, eat outside of the state. So we do have work to do with the tax burden. And as far as drawing people in, I'll just use Pepperell. The town has to be attractive looking. And right now, Pepperell is not attractive for people to come in and visit our restaurants or what little shops we have. So we really have to work on, I hate to say it, but appearances, something that would draw people in. And Townsend is kind of the same way. It's kind of off the beaten path. And it's probably not the kind of town, no offense, Andrew, but it's kind of like Pepperell, that people are going to drive an extra 20 miles to go to a restaurant to. So I think the border town and our tax burden is not attractive to businesses, and our appearance isn't great. So we have marketing and we have a lot of work to do. And it does get back to, again, what the people in town want. Do they really want all the foot traffic and the visitors and the traffic coming? I mean, it is kind of a trade-off, but we do have a lot of work to do. So when I look at the appearances, what do we have that'll draw people here? And being a border town, the taxes and the regulations for business. There's just between the zoning regulations and every other regulation and citizens' attitudes. Sometimes these little towns aren't very attractive for more business or customers to come to. So we do have a lot of marketing to do and law changes.
Thank you. Candidate Shepherd, the floor is yours now on this topic.
Sure, thank you. I think it does come down to what each community wants. I love business. I'm a big business guy, having my own. Some communities just don't want much business. And that's the choice of each community. But for me, to answer your question, I think it comes down to encouraging and working with each town on making sure there's affordable housing and a stock of housing available, and that proper zoning is put in place for options for that. Kim, you mentioned with Groton Hill a lack of places to stay. And I think making sure zoning is acceptable for short-term rentals, and bylaws are in place ahead of time as that facility is getting ready to open will be important. And it's just making a commitment to work with each community, and also being the state rep, looking at the other state reps and how they've handled it in similar geographies and communities, and learning from people that have already gone through this. And the other bit, it comes back to encouraging development where we can, when it's a smart space to do so, and decreasing taxes and regulation, because that's really, when you can make it easier on the bottom line and for businesses to do the work and to have entrepreneurs, they can go out and solve some of these problems.
Thank you. Candidate Scarsdale.
Thank you. As a small business owner myself, I started my writing and consulting business almost 30 years ago. I understand the challenges facing small businesses. When I started on the AIR Downtown Revitalization Program as the manager of that, as I said, AIR was just a very dated, drab place. And yes, people drove through it because there really wasn't a reason to stop unless you were taking the train. There was no draw there. So it's not an overnight process. It requires long-term planning and thoughtful planning. Towns having up-to-date master plans and housing production plans and other foundational instruments are a good start. In knowing where you want to go, you understand where you are and where you want to go. As for bringing in more accommodations like Airbnbs, things like that, towns allow that through their zoning, usually in town residential. That's currently already allowed in Pepperell. And I think that this whole process, you have to be very thoughtful about the balance, right? I've never talked to anyone in thousands of conversations that moved to this area or that have lived here for generations, that say they live here or they moved here because they want it to be like Billerica. People cherish our open spaces. They cherish our small town qualities. And honestly, when you look at the failure of malls around the country, I think people they're looking for something that you can't find in a faceless mall. They're looking for a corridor where you can pop in and out of shops or go to a restaurant and not have to wait because none of them have any openings. And bringing in businesses, one of the big issues with all 6 of our towns is that we are so heavily residential tax based, like 96% generally across the 6 towns of our town budgets. Funding that comes 96% off of the backs of people like you and I, and 4% off of commercial and industrial. So however we can make that commercial and industrial, while being respectful of the town's character, however we can make that more robust, that helps reduce your taxes. And just a note about regulations, I work closely with our planning department and our economic development advisory committee and our building inspector, and people feel like our permitting process, it could be tightened a little, but they feel like it's fair. And I see these as protections. And I think we've all seen what happens when you just let things be a Wild West and count on people to do their best thing. That's how you get the Nashua River being a different color every day. And that's how you get things like W.R. Grace. So I think we need protections in place for our towns to keep them the way that they are.
You might, Kim.
Yeah.
Thank you. So one of the things that and this is a personal question of mine, which I get a little bit of latitude as the moderator to pop in some things now and again. So recently, Pepperell was doing their master plan, Townsend was doing their master plan, and I had the opportunity to sit on the Townsend one. I don't know where the other communities are at with theirs, but one of the struggles is always the execution of a master plan. Right? A lot of time and effort goes into doing workshops and charrettes and having people come forward, answering questionnaires. We get this volume of data that comes in and things that are important to communities. So speaking just for Townsend, the things that folks want, sort of the microbrew atmosphere, some family-friendly places, the improvement for the boat launch, which has been done through the rail trail, more of the rail trail. So that's Townsend's piece. And then Pepperell has their piece. And as I mentioned, the execution is where we all fall down. I'm going to ask you to say yes or no, and why or why not. If you were elected, would you support funding to come to the district for a regional planner to execute the master plan and make some of these ideas come to fruition for the region? Andrew, you'll go first. Yes, no, and why or why not?
I'd say yes. Especially given the surplus we have in the state budget right now, of billions of dollars. As long as there's money there, and we're putting our money first to the roads and bridges and our schools and our infrastructure, and then having some of that left over, going to make sure that we can work in our towns to achieve the goals we want. I think that's a fine idea.
Thanks. Candidate Scarsdale.
You were right about master plans, Kim. There's like a theme to master plans, especially in smaller towns. Every 10 years, people groan, oh my God, we have to do that again. And it's a 1.5 to 2.5 year process. And then you put it on the shelf and it gets dusty until the next 10 years rolls around. And I was elected in 2019. I was already following our master plan and I wanted it to be different. So once I was elected to the select board, once I became chair, I insisted that the select board adopt master plan goals, the ones that were assigned to us, because you have the 10 different categories: land use, zoning, recreation, et cetera. So we each adopted master plan goals that were assigned to the select board. We each took about 13 and we started reporting on those. And in the meantime, I had already been building different kinds of forums with boards, committees, and commissions to bring them into the process and get them excited, because a lot of times you share master plan goals across boards, committees, and commissions. So it's a great way to build teamwork in a town and to build strong relationships, because you're partnering on a specific goal, not some nebulous, we need to work harder or be better or make our community stronger. That process has worked amazingly in Pepperell. It has taken off. We have a master plan implementation team who have been helping to structure, out of all those goals, some are very short term, like a one-off, like, oh, I could get those done in a week. And some of them are kind of, it'll take you a few months to a year. Some of them are really long-term goals. So you have that kind of staging among the goals. And I think the concern for me with having a stranger come in and try to implement that and build relationships with so many different boards, committees, commissions, really understanding the heart of the town. Like, no one understands the heart of the town like the townspeople who live there and work there and raise their children there. So I think our money is better spent in other places. I think Pepperell is an amazing role model for championing our master plan. And we see the results, all over in every sector, because people are invested in it. It's not because I'm getting paid so much an hour, I'll show up and work my 8 hours. People are putting their blood, sweat, and tears into the master plan. And I think it's a model. I'd love to talk more about Townsend and see how we could get you energized around yours, because it's amazing when that happens.
Okay, thanks. Candidate Lundeen.
Well, I think every town's probably individual as to how much help they would need. Right now, Pepperell is following their master plan, and a lot of work did go into it, and they did have some state help. I think it cost $40,000, which actually was beneficial at that time to help the initial committee along. So I do see some benefit to that, but right now we have a town planner who's following the master plan, who's actually doing an excellent job. So as far as giving Pepperell any more money to help in their journey, that town would be a no. I would think that money that would go there could be used somewhere else. So every town is different. Maybe Andrews Town needs $40,000 to get off the ground and have some assistance. You know, that's fine. But right now with the town planner, Pepperell's actually doing very well. But I would really have to think seriously before appropriating money to a town like Pepperell that I don't really see needs it. They're doing quite well right now. The problem is, again, getting citizens on board with the plan, with moving along. So it would vary. I wouldn't be a blanket yes.
Okay, thank you. Within that conversation, a few notes of roads and bridges came up. So certainly we have a surplus right now, but even with that surplus, we have many roads that are in deplorable condition. As our representative, what would you do to make sure that we no longer have roads that have, potholes or that are just not conducive for driving? We'll start this questioning with candidate Scarsdale.
So the surplus is being mandated to come back to citizens. I'm assuming that's going to be happening in the next session. I don't think that's going to get done before the end of the year, unfortunately, but that is mandated to come back to the taxpayers. So none of that approximately $3 billion will go towards our roads and our bridges. And yes, we've probably all played the game of swerving to avoid a pothole or crunching into one. And there's a lot of work to be done here. I support the fair share.
Yeah, you can.
Kathy, can you mute, please?
Yeah, thanks.
I support the fair share amendment because that will bring revenue into the state coffers, and that money that comes from that ballot question, which all voters vote on and decide whether they want that to pass, that money is statutorily required to go into transportation and education. And as a former educator, and having been to visit all of our schools in the district and talked with our superintendents, I understand what a dire need there is on the education front too. So that is a great way to get a jump start on the backlog of road and bridge work that we need to have done in this state.
Thanks. Candidate Lundeen. You will have to unmute.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So it's about, again, budget prioritizing. And isn't the bigger question, like, why aren't those things getting done? I mean, it seems like we put a lot of money into these areas and the work just doesn't get done, whether the money gets taken away or whatever. So is that, to me, that's a whole process that has to be thought about how we do things, because we're not doing it right. We're putting money into areas that really go for years before getting fixed. So other than money, I like to look at what's the blockage, what's holding up getting this done. That is what really, I think the issue is. Sure, I'll give money to transportation if you can show me how this is getting done and it's going to get done by X amount of time. People have to be held accountable for the jobs that they're doing. It's not all about money. So I'm about the process. Show me how it's going to get done. Show me where you're going to change the system. So 5 years down the roads aren't a mess again. If they can't do that, they're not getting the money. I'll put the money to mental health, the homeless, where it really needs to be done. Unless the job's getting done, there's no money.
Thanks. Candidate Shepherd.
I think a big part of the state rep's role is to go down there and make sure we have some balance and we have a check on the majority party. We have somebody that's focused on cutting costs and make sure that the money we save can go towards measures like this. Question 1 got brought up on the ballot initiative about what's being purported as the fair share amendment. I would be against it. I really feel it's disingenuous in a time we had about $6 or $7 billion in state surplus this year, and 2.9 based on the 1986 law is being sent back to taxpayers, which is important and should, because it's owed to the taxpayers. But the rest that gets left behind, adding another tax for more billions and more dollars, if the money's not being spent right already, just throwing money at a problem does not solve the problem. So I think it's continuing to cut costs. I think it's continuing to track it and make sure there's accountability. I think it's looking at the Chapter 90 funding formula and making sure that we, as the First Middlesex, aren't getting left behind, and that money is coming out to support our roads and bridges, and it's continuing to focus on measures like those.
Thank you. So if we just switch gears a little bit, and it's actually something that candidate Lundeen spoke about. The mental health crisis is very real. And what do you see your role as representing us in the First Middlesex District for bringing more services, availability of services, timeliness of services? Right now, if someone is entering the mental health system, it can take a 6-month evaluation and process in order to even start getting them services. And then once services are approved, the wait time to actually get a clinician can be very long, to get a therapist, someone to work with them. What would you be doing to try to bring more resources, more personnel, more programs to our district on that level?
Recently, there is some effort.
Hang on.
Oops. Oh, sorry.
You're not first. We can let you go first on this one if you like.
No, go ahead. I heard my name, Miss Lundeen, so go ahead.
Well, you had mentioned it in your first question.
Oh, okay.
But we'll go ahead. You can start this question.
No, I was just going to say, recently they did put some more money into counseling. Until you see the mental health, the little kids sitting in the ER waiting for beds, not enough counselors, not enough beds, actually not enough everything. And actually, the gist of care is home care, outpatient care. And a lot of times that just doesn't work for these poor people. Holyoke out there, they are adding more beds, another facility, but as sad as that is, and as much as we don't want to admit it, these people need inpatient care. We need more facilities for these people to go to, and that's the bottom line. And the insurance companies have to be pressured to expedite approval of beds for these people. And the money, if I had to look at the money for potholes or for mental health, I would put the money into mental health. And the process, again, needs to be changed. These people cannot be, they tie up the ER. You cannot have psych people in an ER with just regular people coming in. There has to be a solution to that. And there have been hospitals that have tried different areas, moving those people elsewhere. But it just can't go on like this. And the people cannot continue to live like this. Families can't continue to live like this. And if you want to dig deeper, it's a society problem. There is something in our society that we either ignore these people or something is driving people to addiction. We have to address that too. It's just unbelievable. So for me, my highest priority is mental health and children's mental health. And the way I look at it, we need facilities, we need more inpatient care. Outpatient care is not working for some of those people. And our homeless, nobody wants to be homeless. Those people have mental health issues. So that is a big priority to me. And I'll tell you, potholes or mental health and homeless, the money's going there.
Thank you. Candidate Shepherd.
Mental health is such an important issue, and being a call firefighter and going to different calls throughout the community and seeing people at their worst, I mean, it's you want to help them everywhere in every way you can, and part of that is supporting efforts to create more inpatient care facilities and availability. It's making sure we have an availability of therapists and mental health workers and educators. I'm not sure how to distill solving that problem down into only a few short minutes on this Zoom, but without a doubt, I'd be committed to working with our community leaders and community partners to make sure that we're looking at those that need the inpatient facilities. We're looking at the kids in school that are struggling with mental health. That there's so many people that are suffering, and I do think Kathy mentioned it well. What is the core problem? It can also be you got to be looking at the core problem while you're also trying to solve the problem that we have with the remedies of the inpatient and the resources we need there. But whether it's the loss of the family center focus or what it is, we got to try to get to the bottom too of what is the root cause, how can we minimize that and decrease the problem overall.
Thank you. Candidate Scarsdale.
So I was at a legislative briefing about 6 weeks ago now down in Marlborough with the nurses from Stewart Healthcare at Neshoba Valley and with the Massachusetts Nurses Association. And the horror stories that they were telling about not having a supervisor on the floor, having one person in the ER, having people be in the ER for 30 days, and then just be discharged from the ER. Like, we have a public health crisis and really a mental health crisis. Some of that, I think, has been exacerbated by the pandemic. People are stretched so thin. I absolutely support adequate funding for our mental health services, for our social workers, for our teachers who are also sometimes called upon to be social workers and psychologists in the classroom. I've seen that myself. And I don't think that we have to choose between potholes and mental health. When I was on the select board and as chair, I oversaw a $30+ million budget, and you would see me at every single department head meeting. You would see me questioning every single line item so that we could produce a budget that showed our town's values, who we respected and what our vision was for where we wanted to go. Mental health issue, that is a big, costly problem. So you can kind of look at it as penny wise and pound foolish. If we don't want to spend money on it, we're going to spend money on it down the road, and it's going to be far more expensive when we've let those conditions and situations, spiral out of control. And now you have people who don't have safe shelter. So now you have additional problems that go with that. Now you have physical problems that go with that. I think this area, especially, we are a very compassionate community. I have seen how we come together to help our neighbors, to help out when there's an issue. And as state rep, this is a top priority for me. It's, the Massachusetts teachers, the Massachusetts Nurses Association, the Massachusetts social workers, and the professional firefighters of Massachusetts have all endorsed me because they understand my fierce commitment to having their backs and giving them the resources they need so that they are safe and so that our communities are safe.
Thank you. So one of the other complex problems that we're facing is our aging communities. So in our district, we don't have a lot for elder care services, and we have limited housing in each of our communities for our seniors. What is your vision, and how do you see the role as First District representative facilitating changes in that area? Candidate Shepherd, you'll be first in this question.
Sure. When I think about the seniors, I also think about our veterans. I think about our mental health a little bit. I think about our poor. It's about protecting, those who may be underserved, or those who are struggling to advocate for themselves. The seniors are such an important part of our community. So many, have raised a family here, have paid their taxes, paid their dues, put their kids through schools, opened businesses, and now they're in this economic environment where they're living in a home where they may no longer be able to afford it, where they're worried about the upcoming, winter and heating costs, and the electric bill going up 64%. I think it's really important as a state rep to make sure that we continue to fund, and keep level funding, and make sure we're actually funding the programs that we have for our seniors already. I'm beyond committed to doing that, but also try to decrease some of the tax burden on our seniors. And I think that goes to, incentivizing and try to create a better space for businesses to diversify the tax base a little bit. I think that would help, brunt some of the cost that is falling to seniors, and also, you brought up affordable housing, or lack of housing, and, making sure there is a housing space for individuals who, raise their families in these towns and don't have an affordable place to move to live out the rest of their days, I think is really important.
Thank you. Candidate Scarsdale.
So I have volunteered at our senior center for about 10 years now, and I deliver Meals on Wheels. So I see the situation that some of our seniors are in. And one of the saddest things that ever happens to me is when I go in on Mondays to pick up my delivery list and someone is no longer on that list, and come to find out that person has had to leave this community. I grew up in the South where the value of family was so prevalent, from the first, a brand new baby coming into the family to grandma, sitting in the rocker reading her book. Like, it was intergenerational, and it's like a tree, and the seniors are the roots of that tree. And to think about, and I've heard the stories, they were born here, they played Little League here, they went off to the war together, they came back and married their sweetheart, they've raised their family, they're in their golden years, and they just can't keep up with their house. And the waiting list are just abysmally long, like years to move into affordable housing or senior living. We absolutely have to address that. I think one of the problems that small towns like ours see is that we really don't have any ways to incentivize affordable housing. And I think as state rep, I can be a strong partner to make sure that money is coming into the district, just like I brought in that $600,000 this year for our schools. Like, I know how to build those relationships and those collaborations to get that kind of job done. As for the programs for seniors, there are at least a half a dozen of them, Kim. Some of them, very, kind of common, the tax freeze, the circuit breakers, 17D, I think there's a 41F. All of the town assessors know about these programs, getting that information out into senior centers. We're very lucky. The Townsend Senior Center that's just a beautiful place to be. The Pepperell Senior Center, the Albert Harris Center is an amazing place. We need to make sure that people who are visiting there have access to these programs to help lessen the load on them. But addressing affordable housing is just something we really, really have to take a hard look at and make sure that gets done.
Candidate Lundeen.
So my vision is not to have to be delivering Meals on Wheels, not to have to be looking for nursing homes for your mom, not to have elderly decide on medication or food. A big issue with the elderly is the medications that they cost, getting the appropriate health care, being able to pay for their hospitalizations. A big problem is the insurance companies have a hold. And actually, Medicare also has a hold. Our federal government with Social Security and the Medicare issue is a big problem among the elderly. They can't even get through the booklet to figure out what to do. And families actually are so stressed, they don't really know what to do with their elderly mother other than to bring them to the ER. So we need to deal with insurance companies. We need to help families have more patient care to help them. We just have to give the elderly more money through their Social Security. We have to make insurance more available and more affordable for them, because as you get older, you get sicker, and insurance becomes the most important aspect of your life. I mean, if you want to live. If you don't want to live, you're going to save your money and not have insurance. So there's a lot more with the elderly. And my goal would be not to have Meals on Wheels, to have elderly be able to afford their own meals, to afford their medications, to be able to afford to go to the hospital, to be able to understand that Medicare book that they're reading. And affordable housing is important. Yeah, they do need affordable housing once their house gets too big and their kids are gone. But then again, the citizens in the town have to buy into it. If you have citizens that don't want affordable housing, it's not going to happen. So I just see that it's a whole process. And this one starts at the federal government.
Thank you. So throughout the pandemic, there was unprecedented amount of funding available for social service organizations to run their programs and provide services. As those funds are diminishing and as the funding that was going direct to families is no longer in effect, we're seeing more and more people in need of food. The high cost of food has taken folks that would normally be able to go to the groceries on them, by themselves, needing assistance. We are seeing an increase in our unhoused community folks, and Candidate Lundeen, I know you mentioned that people are homeless because of mental health. Well, we need to stop the stigma around mental health and help folks. We are seeing an increase in unhoused families, and it's not mental health related, it is economics related. So as we continue to come out of the pandemic and the increased needs are being seen in our communities, as our representative, how would you get funding to the social service programs that are in existence to bridge the gap before other programs like a RAFT program that prevents homelessness kick into place? Like, what would you be doing? And actually, Candidate Lundeen, you're first for this particular question.
Well, you'd have to appropriate money into social service issues, but some families are actually too proud to seek help. And the problem here is the economy, the cost of things. You get sucked into paying for your oil, paying for your food, and before you know it, you can't pay your mortgage, but you're not going to go looking for help. So the real question is, how are you going to fix the economy before we get to that point? Right now, you can have the social services, advertise for the people to get the money, but a lot of families do not do it and they prefer to suffer. This issue today that we're talking about, I'm sorry, is all self-inflicted, and it falls at the feet of the liberal officials. We didn't have this issue several years ago. I wasn't worried about groceries. I wasn't worried about gas. I could heat my home. I could feed my family. Why can't I do that 2 years later? There's a problem, and that needs to be solved. And I'm sorry, but if you keep voting for the liberal agenda, even Margaret, feel a little pain. We're going to be green. Green initiative is at the base of this in many ways. By 2035, she can guarantee that we'll be green. We're going to be cold until 2035. So I'm sorry, there's a bigger issue. I'll gladly give the money to any social program to stop families from being homeless. But there is a big problem, and that's what we need to solve. I'm sorry. Thanks. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Right. Candidate Shepherd.
I really see, we talk about this troubling environment, the price of everything going up. I really do put it at the base of federal policies. We're pumping trillions of dollars into the economy and overheating the U.S. economy. I mean, you look at inflation, it's the highest it's been in such a long period of time. The price of everything is just absolutely insane. It's getting passed on to consumers. It's bankrupting families. It's pushing people out of their homes. People can't afford food. It comes down to me making sure we're supporting policies that create an economic environment where, like Kathy mentioned a few years ago, we didn't have this problem, and we had a predictable economy. You had a well-functioning one, and that's what it comes down to me. As a state rep, I think it's important to continue level funding for these social programs. I was proud to volunteer and work with the TEO during the pandemic and deliver food to those who were in need, and go down to the Boston Food Bank and pick up resources that were needed. I think it's important that as many social organizations are getting their level funding, and we continue that. We don't want people on the streets. We want people to be fed, but we also fundamentally need to create an environment that is creating economic prosperity for everybody, and an opportunity and freedoms to make the decisions that's best for you and your family and run your business as you see fit.
Thanks. Candidate Scarsdale.
I think it is so easy to try to simplify problems, and it certainly seems to be a go-to these days to just point the finger at someone else or some other kind of policy. The truth is the entire world was upended by the COVID pandemic. It disrupted supply chains. Mass exodus from the workforce, businesses failing, people being evicted, losing their health care. We are just in a very, very rough and traumatic place as human beings. And it is a big problem, but we are good at solving big problems. We have done that in the past. We have to be thoughtful about solutions. No, we can't just throw money at things, but we do have to understand where some things are an investment. Like everyone else. Yes, I mean, thankfully, gas prices have come down some. We have a war in Ukraine. We have other world leaders who are going to be upsetting our oil market. I think it makes sense to wean ourselves off of oil so we are not held hostage to other people, so that we can be independent with our energy sources. I think that's a good use of our money. And yes, we dumped trillions of dollars into our economy. That was to save us from complete collapse. I mean, look at how all of our systems are still so strained. I talked to our first responders. They're exhausted. Our teachers are traumatized and exhausted. Our nurses and our doctors, our social workers, everybody is stretched thin. Average people like myself who just try to work, I'm stretched thin because I have to keep cutting back on things. No one likes that. What are the solutions? I think they are being smart about where we're spending our money. And I can only point to my evidence and my history of being a fierce conservative as far as fiscally, going over a budget line item by line item to say, what is the justification for this? How much do you really need? Where is a bigger need? How can we shift this? These aren't easy. There's not a magic pill. But I do agree with you. It's a foundational thing to have just basic social services and basic mental health. And that is a priority for me.
Thank you. I appreciate all three of you coming together this morning to respond to some questions that came in. And as I said, there was a question of my own put into the middle there. But but we certainly can't cover everything that's important to you. So I'd like to give you each 2 minutes in a closing for things that we might not have talked about today, or something that you just want to emphasize out of comments that you've already made. So you have a bit of time to just kind of talk to us as a candidate without having a question from me. So we will start with candidate Shepherd, and to just give some of his closing thoughts and ideas that might not have been put on the table this morning.
Sure. Thank you, Kim, and my fellow candidates. I really deeply believe that we need balance on Beacon Hill. We can't continue, tax and spend, which I think comes from the majority party, and I don't think that will be effective. We need to have a voice that can push back on it. I want to go down. I want to get the resources that we need, but I also want to check the overspending and the callousness that I do think comes out of the majority party. For myself, Kim, you asked us as candidates to bring up something that we care about, or that we didn't get a chance to talk about. Definitely, being with TCAM, talking in town, at the Townsend debate. A big thing for me is the municipal choice bill. It's Townsend, Ashby, and Lunenburg have been served by Unitil for a long period of time, and it's one of the top 10 most expensive electric providers in the country. And it's about putting money back in people's pocket. It's about creating a competitive economic environment. The municipal choice bill creates a state pathway that acts as a market threat for communities to decide, maybe we want to push out Unitil and start a municipal electric company where there are dramatically cheaper rates. And I think over time, having lower rates, more money in people's pockets, that is huge. And that is part of what we need to be doing to create an environment where people and businesses can thrive. As a firefighter, as a farmer, and a small business owner, and having worked on Beacon Hill before, I am excited and honored to be in front of you today and work to earn your vote come November 8th. I ask for your vote. I'd love for you to check out our website and our Facebook. Our website is www.repshep.com. And our campaign Facebook is Shep for Rep. Thank you again, everybody. And I look forward to seeing you out on the campaign trail in November 8th.
Thank you. Candidate Scarsdale.
Well, thank you, Kim. I appreciate all your work to put this on. It was quite a few hurdles, and thank you for that. Thank you to the Townsend Business Association and TCAM. You always do a fabulous job. And the other candidates for stepping up. It is a big commitment. And I will say I'm a small business owner, I'm a former teacher, and I care about community building. And I have a strong and dedicated record of doing just that. If I can tell you a very quick personal story, ever since I was a little girl, I have always wished I had a calling and a purpose. And I have found that calling and I have found that purpose in public service. And I am running to be your state representative because I want to bring that power and that purpose to this district, as I have been doing in the past. As chair of the select board, I saw the things we talked about up close and in people's living room. I saw seniors struggling to make ends meet. I saw exhausted business owners just trying to keep their doors open. And I saw stressed families and stressed teachers and stressed students juggling the first new normal of being virtual and then trying to be back in the classroom with that lapse in learning. People shouldn't have to make choices about whether to pay their prescriptions or whether to pay for their mortgage. These things just aren't right. And it's long past time we had a leader on Beacon Hill who understood the challenges of this district, is in it every day, working in it every day, solving things for it every day, who's fighting for us on Beacon Hill. We do have so many issues. We've just touched on some of them here. Tackling the rising cost of living, affordable housing, climate change, which we didn't talk about. There are going to be tough fights. And Our community is no stranger to tough fights. I mentioned Kinder Morgan and the toxic dirt fight at the top of this forum. I was a leader in both of those. I saw the power of community engagement in those living rooms and in those church basements. And I cannot tell you how many people said, you can't win that fight against that multi-billion-dollar corporation or against the state. And I looked around the room at those people and their commitment and that energy. And I didn't think there was a way that we could lose. And there's a reason for that, because there is a power when we stand together. When we look beyond partisan differences and focus on the needs of our community. And that has been my work for the better part of a decade. I've chaired the Pepperell Select Board. I chaired a bylaw committee. I wrote 4 grants last year, successful to bring economic development and needed services into town, including for our senior center. I co-founded a regional municipal climate change group that includes over 40 towns. I saved our district over $500,000 this year, as I've mentioned before.
I'm gonna have to call time on that one.
Oh, can I just wrap it up then?
Yes.
I didn't realize there was a time. You didn't say time limit.
Sorry.
Well, it all comes down to this. I think internships at the State House are great, but experience really does matter. Advocacy matters. Coalition building matters. I know what it takes to get the job done because I've gotten it done. And I know what it takes to advocate for things that don't come easily because I have done this consistently, steadfastly, and passionately for many years now. You can find out all about my work at margaretscarsdale.com, and I would be honored to earn your vote on or before November 8th. Thank you.
Candidate Lundeen.
I do just have to say one thing I forgot, because I hear it over and over again. I was a teacher. So wasn't I. I taught at a community college. So, I just wanted to get that out. So I know how hard teaching is. So what I want to do is change things. I don't really want to work within the same that we have. The same is not working. That's why we're here. To say the same, which I do feel Margaret is the same, is not going to advance us. So I'm there to look at processes and to change them. It's just not an appropriate money and try and, get the money back to the community. Things need to change. And one thing needs to change. The two sides do need to come together. The left is pretty ideological, and that's why we're in this situation today. They have ideologies that have put us in this situation that we're discussing these terrible issues on how to solve. The Republicans, I have no issue actually with Andrew. We actually get along pretty well. They're just not strong enough. And if everything's Democratic, they're not going to really listen to the Republican. You just need someone who can look at a problem, figure out how to change things, and bring the sides together. I'm not going to be bound by any union or special interest or anything. I'm only going to listen to the citizens and look at society's problems and try and find a solution to make it better. Throwing money is not the answer. If it was, everything would be hunky-dory, and it's not. And it's pretty clear the choice here. One side, I'm going to lay every single problem that we discussed at the feet of that party. And the other side has not been strong enough to bring them to the middle. You need someone who's going to go down there and have a strong voice, which I have, and I'll be relentless to change the systems, to make our lives better through system changes. And then when we have the money, we can, hopefully system changes will help. Decrease taxation, less regulation, money going to the very needy, not to people who have a means to advance themselves, but to people who can't. That's where our money should be going. And the individual, it's not always about the community. It's about individual advancing themselves. So that's my point. That's what I want to do. And I actually think I can do a good job. And sure, I have a website and whatever, but I'm pretty much out on social media, so you can find me anywhere. And that's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all three of you for coming together this morning. Thank you, Dave, and everyone at TCAM for always being there to help with whatever the community needs to get information out. Best of luck for all of you, and I hope our communities come out and vote for their candidate of choice. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks, Kim. Thank you.